All right. Well, in this lesson, this tutorial, I'll be showing you guys how the process of creating a skeleton and how to bind an object to that skeleton as a skin works. This is another especially important step during the rigging process, since pretty much what we do with characters and rigging is put a skeleton underneath them, and then this skeleton will deform the body along the animation. And to be a bit more clear on that, we'll start with the exercise. I will start by creating a cylinder. This cylinder will have 10 divisions along the height, for example, and let's scale it 3 units in Y. So we're going to bring it up 3 units as well, so it's laying on the ground. And then we'll shift to our side view. Let's get closer. I'm going to press number 4 on the keyboard so I can get the wireframe view. And then I will go here in the animation menu. We have a submenu called skeleton. So I'm going to click skeleton, and I'm going to select this first tool called the join tool option box. I will start by resetting the tool. And then as you see now, the cursor turns into a reticle, and kind of like a crosshair. This will be useful to set the position of the skin of the skeleton inside Maya. Usually, when you trace a skeleton, you go to one of the orthographic views like front, side, or top, because if you put a bone on the perspective view, it doesn't have depth. It could go whichever position in the set axis, and we don't really want that to happen. We really want all the bones to be set, or to be set at the same with the same depth, so we can move them all along together. So I will start with the V key. Remember, the V key allows us to click and snap to the vertices. I will start putting a bone every 2 divisions along the cylinder up to the top. And once I finish the hierarchy, I click enter. Now, to navigate through the hierarchy, I can use the up and down arrows. So if I want to go down the hierarchy, I can press the down arrow. You see there, it's joint 6. That's the 6th bone I set up. Then if I press up arrow, I go to the 5th one, the 4th one, 3rd one, and so on. And another important thing to mention is that all the bones work in a hierarchy. With that, I mean that if I go, for example, here to the joint 3, and I rotate it, notice how all the bones that are down the hierarchy get affected by the rotation or translation of this bone. However, the first 2, or the 2 bones above the hierarchy, doesn't get affected at all. We can also affect them with something called an IK effector, but it's not the purpose of this lesson or this course to try and show you how IK works. For now, everything we'll be working on FK. So if I want this object to get deformed as I rotate the bones, first I need to make sure that I'm setting the bones correctly. So as you can see here on the side view, it's perfectly centered. However, if I jump into the front view, that's not the case. So I have to bring the bones hierarchy again to the center. I'm going to select the first bone, and move it. Basically, again, I press B and I bring it to the center. And since this is the head, or the first bone in the hierarchy, it's bringing along all together the rest of the bones in the chain. So now I see that it's also here. All right. Maybe it will be better if I just bring it down from here. to the center. That's it. So now it's centered, okay? Now I can go back into my perspective view. And now with the hierarchy, bone hierarchy selected, I'm gonna shift select the object, and I go into the skin menu, and I'm going to select the first option, smooth bind option box. I'm gonna reset the settings, and basically the only two values I used to work with in this dialog box are the max influences, which is the number of vertices that each bone will affect. And they start counting from the origin or the center of the bone towards the exterior. Imagine if this bone has a sphere around it, and that sphere is big enough to cover the next 5 vertices in every direction. All those vertices will be affected by that bone. So that's the number of influences. And the drop-off rate, it's how fast the influence from that bone to those vertices will start diminishing. The further the vertices are from the bone, they will be less affected by it. And we'll see how this works. Usually I work with the number of max influences I work is 3. That's a number that is commonly used for video games, because the more influences you have, the more memory it consumes the character. And usually with 3 influences, it's more than enough to work with. And I'll leave the drop-off rate at 4. I'm gonna hit bind skin, and as you can see from now on, if I rotate this bone, or any bone for that matter, the object gets the form. So if I rotate this 0 away, now the rest of the mesh is reacting or responding to the deformations or rotations of the bones I'm doing. And however, the rotations are not really usually when we just bind the skin to the skeleton, the deformations are not really great by default. So we have to enter into another process called skinning, which is kind of like it's I would say it's a boring process, but it needs to be done. It's kind of like laying out UVs when doing textures. You have to paint all the vertices influences from each of the bones, and I'm going to do a quick exercise. It's not the purpose of this lesson to completely skin or paint the weights of this cylinder, but for now I will be concentrating on doing this bone and skinning of this just to show you guys how it works. So with that said, I'm going to press 5 to go back into the shaded view. And here on shading, I'm going to turn on the X-ray joints option so I can still see where my joints are. Okay, I'm gonna pick joint number 3. Actually, I'm also selecting this option, wireframe and shaded, so I can go back and forth between the mesh and the bones and still having both visible on the viewport. So I'm going to select the joint number 4, and I'm going to rotate it slightly like this. Okay, and now I'm going to select the mesh, and I'm gonna jump into another option, another tool called Paint Skin Weights tool. I'm going to open the option box in here. Now, as you can see, the mesh now turns into a black and white, kind of like a gamma or a spectrum. What this means, or what this shows us, is it's usually working 2 colors and a grayscale, because the wider the vertices are, the more influence they have from the bone that's affecting them. The blacker they are, it means that they're non-affected at all by that bone in particular. So here, as you can see, I have all the hierarchy of joints. I'm currently selecting joint 4, and this tells me that all these vertices around this area are not affected by the rotation of this bone at all, because they're black. Almost the same thing happens here, although we see that they're gray. They are somewhat affected by this joint rotation, and the whiter ones, they should be around this area, not around this one. So that's a matter of I need to start painting the weights with the mouse. Now to do so, you'll see that I get an artisan on screen. My mouse cursor turns into a I don't know how you say that in English. It's kind of like the tool you use to paint watercolors, and you see that there's a circle. If I press B, not B as in Victor, but B as in Bruno or baby, I keep the letter B pressed and see how my cursor changed from left to right. Now with the left mouse button, I can press it. I'm still pressing B, the B key on the keyboard, and see how if I move my cursor from left to right while pressing the left mouse button and B, I'm changing the size of the artisan. So I'm going to bring it down to a level like this, and now I will start painting. But before doing so, let's see here our options. So we have basically the two modes I use the most is paint and select. In paint is this mode that we will be reviewing today. I'll be showing you guys how to paint the vertices. Another option similar to 3ds Max is select option. You can select vertices and just with this option start typing values for the weight or the influence that this bone will have on them. It's a slower process, but it's a bit more effective for those areas that are very, very difficult to get the result we are expecting with painting. But for now, we'll start with paint. And the paint operation, basically, I'm using replace and smooth. The replace either changes the value from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0 based on the value I have set in here. And the opacity. The opacity is the pressure. If you are using a tablet, you don't have to worry about opacity because this is based on the pressure you apply to the pen. But here, since I'm working with a mouse, I have to define the pressure that my mouse will simulate. That's the opacity value. And the value could either go from 0 to 1, which is 0 will be black and 1 will be white, which means total influence from the bone. So let's start with that and see. I'll change the opacity to 0.15. I'd like to start with a low value and see what happens here. Okay, so if I press the mouse here, I see that the values are the vertices are getting away from the corner. That's not exactly what I want. I want them to get closer to it in order to make this turn a bit more. I'll give it more volume in here. Imagine if this is an arm. When you bend your arm doesn't lose volume in the flexion here. It kind of like just does the flexing without losing the volume here. So what I'm going to do is change this value to maybe 1, no, to 0, and just start painting this and these bones and these vertices, sorry. So I'm extending, I'm smoothing try to keep your loops rounded here. I'm smoothing out that part of the mesh, and if I need to, I could just jump here and continue painting all these vertices, for example, that are a bit difficult to work with, like this. So more like this. Don't worry about this. We can just work one side, and then after that we could mirror the weights to the other side. It's not. We don't need to go all around this. I'm just gonna do it right now because it's a bit faster. And then I'm going to do kind of like the same. But here, if I continue doing that, the vertices are getting away from the bone. So that means I need to change my value to 1. I'm going to do follow a similar process that I followed here. All right, so I'm closing the gap in here, and that's the basic idea of this, because I really want the flexion to be less noticeable, and I don't want this to lose volume in that area. So I'll continue painting. And also for the sake of the tutorial, I don't want to go, I won't go that far on the details in this process, but you see now how my flexion is, it's getting more volume. I'm getting closer to what I want, to the results I want here. And let's continue doing this until we are comfortable with the result we want. And now you see it's closer to it. It's really close. And we're going to change this value to 1, and we'll continue working on influences over this area of the bone, of the body, the mesh, sorry. All right. So you see that's how I'm working the influences. So if I select the joint and I rotate it back, notice how it goes back to its position there. And when I rotate it, doesn't lose as much volume. Of course, it seems that here in this area, it's a bit problematic. I'm gonna need either more time painting the weights, or more polygons in this area, just to make the pen a little better. But for now, I think I will be stopping the lesson there. And well, that's basically the process we're going to follow. Now, if I want, and this is what I kind of like what we are going to do with the Lego character. If I want this bone to influence the whole mesh, I could just press this flood button and select the value. So if I go 1 and press flood, you see how the more I press the button, everything, the whole mesh, the whole piece will be affected by bone number 4, because it's the bone I have selected in here. So I'm flooding it. And so now when I rotate it, you see everything reacts to that bone in particular. The whole piece gets moved with the bone. If I jump into joint number 5 and do the same, notice how I'm rotating, but the mesh is not reacting to it, because the whole object is white on bone number 4. If I jump to joint number 5, see how it's black, so it doesn't have any influence on the object whatsoever, compared to 4, which has all the influence. That's why it rotates along the rotation of the joint number 4, but not with joint number 5 or joint number 3 for that matter. All right, so that's basically what we will be doing with the Lego character. We'll be adding the skeleton, but we'll be binding the entire piece to each of the bone parts, so it can move totally like a plastic toy. And with that, saying bye. See you in the next one. Thank you.